Welcome back to Daytime. I'm sure many of you are like me, just so relieved to have live theater back in person. And, you know, it's hard to believe 110 years the Ottawa Little Theatre has been around, and my next guest has been around for a while, but certainly nowhere close to 110 years. Sarah Hearn joins me, actor with the Ottawa Little Theatre, but you've been with them for what, over 30 years now?
Over 30 years, yeah.
Amazing. What was your start with the Ottawa Little Theatre?
I actually didn't even know it existed.
Okay.
And then somebody told me there was an audition coming up, and I'd always done theater in university, high school, that sort of thing. And I thought, well, I'll go to the audition. And I didn't get a part that time, but it kind of put the bug back in me, as it were. And the next one I went to, I got a part. So,
nice.
And I kind of haven't looked back since.
Yeah, like how many productions have you kept count?
Oh,
have you been
goodness.
involved in?
I don't know, because the last play I acted in was, I played Miss Marple in A Murder's Announced, which was great fun, and that was before the pandemic, just before the pandemic. And then I also been directing plays for a long time.
Yeah.
And my last play I directed was last June, was The Columnist, which was great. It was a great play by a guy called David Auburn. So I've been doing a lot more directing, but yeah, this time I got back on the
Good for you. I'm so excited to see it. And this is a really intriguing play because there's a lot of interesting history behind it.
Right.
It is called the 12 Angry Jurors. Tell me about the history, first of all.
The interesting thing about 12 Angry Jurors is that, unlike many plays, this play started backwards. It started as a TV show in the 50s.
Okay.
And then they made it into the movie that had Henry Fonda and a lot of other people. And I watched a bit of it and went, oh my God, it's Quincy, MD. It was Jack Klugman was in it. And then it became a stage play, 12 Angry Men. It was called 12 Angry Men all this time, which struck me as odd, but anyway. Yeah. And then it became, then there was 12 Angry Women, which strikes me as even odder. And then they made 12 Angry Jurors, or they decided that, you know, juries should be integrated, as it were, men and women.
Of course.
So it's always up to every director how many men and how many women they want to cast. Any of the parts could be either gender.
Right, of course.
So we have 5 women and 7 men, and the guy who plays the guard. So 8 men, really. And
so what's the storyline?
The story is, it all takes place in a jury room. So there's 12 people in a very small room. We have been tasked to make a decision on the guilt or not of a young man who's been accused of murdering his father.
Okay.
The interesting thing about the play is that nobody in the play has a name. We're all juror number this, juror number that. Okay. I'm juror number 4.
All right.
And the young man who's been accused of murdering his father is not identified, but all he is really is the other. He's other. So it doesn't say what otherness he is. I always thought perhaps he was African American, but actually the general consensus in the cast was that he was likely Latino in some nation. And so he's been accused, he lives in a tenement, he's been accused of murdering his father. So when the jury comes into the jury room, the play is basically watching the jury move from one position to another and back again and back again.
Right.
There's 11 people at the beginning who say he's guilty and one who says he's not guilty. And the one who says he's not guilty starts saying, I don't know if he's guilty, I just want to talk about this. That's all I want to do, is I want to talk about what we heard, what we saw, all the things that went together to make this trial. And so that's what this play really is. Okay. But it's a kind of a study in watching people work through preconceived notions. Everybody comes in saying guilty, guilty.
Right. But different characteristics with all of them? Like, how would you describe your
My character,
role?
I'm unusually, we've set the play in 1957.
Okay.
Unusually for 1957, I am a successful businesswoman.
Okay.
So that was not that usual for women. I'm sure there were lots of successful businesswomen at the time, but we have the director, Susan Monahan, has done a great job of diversifying the cast. We have one character who plays she's the old lady. In the first production we did of this in 1990, that part was played by a man. This time it's played by a woman. So she represents, you know, the old people in society. We're really a cross section of society.
Right.
So there's a young woman in the cast who plays a housewife and mother, and she's a young Asian woman. We have another young woman who plays basically the kind of secretary, typing pool type.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
the young woman
yeah.
who this is her first big kind of responsibility. And then the men are very diversified too, mostly in the same sort of age range, but there's one
Okay.
guy who's playing a professor and another who is a man who himself was raised in a slum, lived in a slum, so he relates to the accused.
It's almost like the audience is sort of a fly on the wall, right?
Exactly.
And watching this dynamic of
Exactly.
what kind of, you know, I'm sure conflict erupts and, you know, angers flare and
That's
and
right.
that
There's
sort of thing.
one fellow who's absolutely determined that this guy is guilty, and one of the men who is the one who is determined that he's not guilty says, "You want him to be guilty because you want him to be guilty, not because of what the
Gotcha.
evidence says."
Before we run out of time, you're having a talkback, right?
Yes,
Which is an exciting opportunity.
Wednesday the 10th, after the show, which is an evening performance at 7:30. So the play is not long, so it'll be around 9:30, quarter to 10. We're having Dr. Eva Apostolova. She's a professor at Dominican University College,
Okay.
and she's a professor of philosophy, and she's going to be discussing how we're influenced to make decisions, and how often we take the most obvious shorter path, which is very relevant,
Right, yeah,
to this.
yeah, it's gonna be-
Judging others rather than questioning what makes us think like
Yeah,
that.
great opportunity,
So,
Sarah. Great to see you again.
You too,
Thank
Derek.
you so
Thank
much.
you so
Thanks
much.
for coming in. 12 Angry Jurors, Ottawa Little Theatre, May 3rd to the 20th. You can find out more information at ottawalittletheatre.com.